Close your eyes and imagine yourself at a stadium. You're cheering on your favorite team, and all of a sudden, you see a player from your team take down the opposing team's quarterback before he can throw the ball. You, along with other fans, roar in approval. It suddenly dies down as you all start to notice the quarterback hasn't gotten up yet. You hear a whistle and wonder if he's okay. Actually, he's not. Coaches and medics run out onto the field before bringing a cart out and loading him on. As the refs review the play, they declare the hit was targeting and your team's player is ejected from the game. Confused, angry, and worried spoken opinions can be heard across the stadium. Sounds pretty serious, right? Hi, and welcome to our first podcast episode. And if you haven't already, you can open your eyes now. My name is Sarah Muggy, and I am a student at the University of Kentucky. Today, you will be hearing from members of my WRD 111 group on a topic that we feel strongly about, and that is the targeting rule, specifically in college and NFL football. We chose this topic because we are all somehow connected to this wonderful sport, as are many people in the U.S. To us, it was worth further inquiry because it deals with the well-being of the players of the sport that we love to watch. And even though the game is fun and exhilarating to us as spectators, we know the safety of the individuals is as equally important. With that said, let's dive right in. According to the NCAA official rulebook, the targeting rule states that, quote, no player shall target and make forcible contact to the head or neck area of a defenseless opponent with the helmet, forearm, hand, fist, elbow, or shoulder. This foul requires that there be at least one indicator of targeting. When in question, it is a foul. End quote. Targeting means that a player takes aim at an opponent for purposes of attacking with forcible contact that goes beyond making a legal tackle or a legal block or playing the ball. Some indicators of targeting include, but are not limited to, a launch, which is when a player is leaving his feet to attack an opponent by an upward and forcible thrust of the body to make forcible contact at the head or neck area, as well as a crouch, followed by an upward and forward thrust or leading with the helmet, shoulder, forearm, fist, hand, or elbow, and lowering the head before attacking by initiating forcible contact with the crown of the helmet. Multiple people are affected by the injuries of players. The two most common injuries are injuries to the head and leg. Both can prevent a player from reaching their full potential. With that said, the task of limiting these injuries without taking away the true identity of the game of football is nothing short of difficult. In a few moments, you will hear from Braxton, Cade, and Samantha on the positions of our stakeholders on this topic. Throughout the project, we were trying to find the impact of the targeting rule that was implemented to reduce the frequency of concussions has on injuries to the head and injuries to the leg. Thanks for listening, and please tune in to our next podcast.
Welcome everyone to episode 2 of a 5-part series. You heard the introduction from Sarah Muggy. I will now be kicking off the stakeholder part of the 5-part series. Who is a bigger stakeholder on this topic of the targeting rule in football than the football players? There isn't one. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Anyone who watches professional football knows how big of a rival the Cincinnati Bengals are to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every year it's a super dirty game, a very heated rivalry between the fans and between the players, coaches, etc. And the second time they played this past season, there were 2 incidents that happened with the targeting rule. The first one was Steelers wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster got thrown out and received a 1-game suspension for his hit on Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict. And the second one was Bengals safety George Iloka got ejected and a 1-game suspension for his hit on Steelers wide receiver Antonio Brown. Now, Mike Mitchell, who is safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's a 9-year NFL veteran. He's been around the league for a long time. The Steelers is the 3rd team that he's played on. He went on this epic rant basically talking about how football changed his life and his family legacy's life, and how they're taking away the true value of it, and how that they should basically just give them flags if they're going to keep fining him and all that. And he basically made it very clear that he thinks that all the blame goes on the defensive players, and nobody thinks about, well, what if the quarterback thrown a bad ball and all this. Really a lot of stuff to get into, but he did tweet after the game, and he said, "Steeler Nation, at George_Iloka is a good friend. We've spent many summers training together." And then he put in all caps, "He's not a dirty player." And then he said, "He's a stand-up guy, just a hard-nosed, no BS player. In no way was he trying to hurt Antonio Brown, just like I know at Team Juju Smith-Schuster wasn't trying to hurt number 55, which is Vontaze Burfict." Then he ended the tweet by saying, "Football is violent, #facts." So he was very outraged by this, and he just looked at it as it was unfair for both players. Although George Iloka is on the opposite team, it was unfair for both players to get suspended for one game and then have the reputation of being a dirty player in the league. That's not the only thing that happened this past season, the only instance of this. Also in the AFC Championship game, the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the New England Patriots, Jaguars safety Barry Church was fined $24,309 for his hit on Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is a 6'6", 265-pound tight end. He has tore the league apart. He's such a good player. He does have an injury past, though. But Gronk suffered a concussion that game, but he was able to be back for the Super Bowl. He got back a week and a half, and the Super Bowl was in 2 weeks. And corner Richard Sherman, who played his first 7 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks, and he just recently signed with the 49ers to play his 8th season, he took his rant to Twitter. He was clearly watching this game, and he said the hit on Gronk is the only way Church could have done his job without just obliterating Gronk's knee. If he would have just hit him low, most people would call him dirty. So there is nothing he can do to make everyone happy and do his job, unless you think he should let him catch the ball. And then he followed it up by saying, "Would love to see some of these fans play the game. They all have such great perspectives. Couldn't even imagine playing at the speed and intensity that these men are playing at. Split-second decisions." Sherman has been in the league for 8 years. He's entering his 8th year. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, and a 1-time Super Bowl champion. He knows what he's talking about, and I think that the angle that he was talking about is just how quick the game is, how fast-paced. These are the best athletes in the world playing this game. It's hard for them to make a decision on doing the right thing and not aiming for somebody. It's all kind of a natural instinct by now because they've been playing their whole life. And I think the part about Gronk's knee, I think he was just trying to get at, Gronk was back in time for the Super Bowl. If he would have, let's say Church went low and hit his ACL, I think Sherman was saying he probably wouldn't have been back for the Super Bowl, and the severity of the injury would have been that way. So you see how 2 NFL football players feel about this topic. Tune into the next episode. Jack Sparrow will give you a coach's perspective on this topic. Thank you.
All right, I'm sitting here with my high school football coach, Kent McNally. Kent, or should I say Coach McNally, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Cade. Thanks for having me out here today.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Well, my group project is on the targeting rule in football. We've been discussing how it's affected football in the NFL, college, and high school level. We were thinking we would get a coach's opinion, so we're glad we could have you. I'll start off with asking you, have you seen any change in the years recently with the targeting rule? Have you seen a change in injuries, head, neck, maybe related to knee injuries with going for the knees instead of the head or anything like that?
All right, Cade, I've been coaching for a little while now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the targeting rule came out around 2006.
Yes, sir. I think it came around sometime around there.
And at that time, I was coaching at a small high school up here in Louisville, and way before I came here at Cal. And when that came out, everybody was, they just didn't know what was going to happen with the game, because it's kind of making a contact sport, a little less contact. And so I since 2006 and that came out, I have noticed a change in the game and how kids play, but I have not noticed a change in injuries, and you still see those concussions all the time, and you see hurt backs and hurt necks at every game almost, and I just do not think that targeting rule has solved any of the problems that they tried to come out and solve.
Okay, so let me ask you this. There's a lot of talk about maybe, the targeting rule in the NFL with those players being so big, so strong, there's so much power in every hit. So how do you think that correlates to a high school football targeting rule? Do you think maybe those players are smaller, the hits aren't as hard as they are in college and pro level maybe? Do you think there should be any correlation with that to the targeting rule?
Right. I mean, you're gonna see hard hits wherever you go. I mean, you see hard hits even in grade school football, and kids getting hurt there. It's just all about the game. I mean, you get hit and then you hit back. It's you can't change that. You can't change the game of football. So I think, yeah, there's some changes that they could make. Maybe better coaching. When kids are younger, they got to learn the fundamentals and techniques. And I know some coaches are out there just telling kids to go out there and hit them as hard as they can, which obviously is completely wrong. They got to know the fundamentals, know how to break down and tackle somebody without potentially hurting themselves or another player. Yeah. And I think it all starts from there at a younger age. And if you're coached right through high school, and if you're good enough to go on and play in college, those are some of the best coaches in the world.
Sure.
And they'll definitely teach you how to hit. And I don't think this targeting rule has anything to do with injuries or having to stop injuries. It's just because like I said, you're still going to get hit. So if you have a good coach and you're taught how to hit, you should never really have to even worry about the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know. It's you go out there on Friday nights, and obviously there's gonna be an injury. You're already banking on getting an injury or some kid getting hurt, which is horrible, but something's bound to happen. And I don't think the whole targeting rule that came out in 2006 has really solved anything.
Well, Coach, I know you played a little college ball down at Murray State for a couple years at least. Can you tell me now? There's been lots of reports recently coming out about mental disabilities, mental handicaps of old football players who have felt the effects later on in life. Mental breakdowns, things like that, anger problems. Do you have any worry? Do you put any thought into that maybe coming into your life? Is that prevalent to you, or is that just out of the picture for you?
Well, Cade, yeah, I was a linebacker at Murray State for 4 years, and I took some pretty big hits, and I've played my whole life up to that since I could walk. So I mean, you see the movies coming out and all that, talking about head injuries with the older players and getting, I don't know, like dementia or going psychotic, but I'm sitting here today talking to you, coaching,
not prevalent
and
with you.
I'm not feeling anything, and I don't plan on getting tested or doing anything, because I'm doing fine. Because like I said, I was taught correctly by my father when I was a kid how to tackle and how to correctly tackle, and I never, God blessed me through my football career with no major injuries. So I
Awesome. Glad to hear it, Coach. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you talking with me. We appreciate your expertise on the subject. That was Coach Kent McNally at Christian Academy of Louisville High School. Thank you, Coach. Have a good day.
Thank you, Cade.
Wiley, and I'm going to be talking to you about our stakeholders in the medical field. Another very important stakeholder we believe worth talking about is anyone in the medical profession. When a player is injured, they are then handed over to those in the medical field for care. The parents and coaches are then putting their faith in those medical professions to make sure that the injured are okay. My source is an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist. He was the director at the Medical University of South Carolina for 8 years, which goes to show how familiar he is with this topic. Dr. David Gere opened his own practice after 8 years after they spent at the university. During his journey of being a surgeon, David also had a passion for writing, which is why he then decided to create a blog of his own to make sports medicine simpler to understand for parents, coaches, players, and everyday people. In 2016, Dr. Gere was also doing his own research to answer the same thing our group is wondering. What is the actual impact on head and leg injuries after the targeting rules implemented in the NCAA? David found an MD, Robert Westerman, at the University of Iowa had done a 5-year study on the targeting rule and the injuries following. The 5-year study took place between 2009 to 2014 and included 48 NCAA football teams at games and practices. That's a little over 1/3 of all NCAA football teams. In this research, it showed that the targeting rule did not reduce head injuries, but in fact increased by almost 2%. Not to mention that lower extremities like leg, knee, ankles, and foot injuries have increased by 9.45% in the season 2009-2010 to 12.63 in 2013 to 2014. This goes to show that the targeting rule is not actually accomplishing the goal it is set to achieve. Nearly 1/3 of all concussions are occurred in the sport of football itself. With the new targeting rule implemented, you would think that it would help lower the number, but as talked about before, the numbers only increased. The effect this rule also causes long-term disabilities with players' legs, keeping them from continuing their professional careers. Dr. Westerman then discussed how leg injuries can bring long-term pain and arthritis as each player ages. Quote, "Time and much more research will tell us if we are truly protecting athletes or just trading one injury with long-term consequences for other ones," end quote, said Westerman. With that being said, I believe the NCAA had good intentions of trying to prevent head injuries, but then made it more likely for leg injuries to occur during the already dangerous sport. I believe that more research will discover more and more about the effects of the rule, but for now it has shown that it is ineffective in only increasing numbers of injuries. What's your opinion? Do you think that the number of injuries increasing, that the targeting rule should still be in effect? For more information about Dr. Gere and his practice, you can visit his blog at drdavidgere.com. That is spelled DAVIDGEIER.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen to episode 4. I hope everyone is enjoying this podcast season. In our next and final episode, we're going to go back and talk to everyone and see what their opinion is based off of the stakeholder they researched.
Found in the research that I did with my stakeholder as the players, I found that, players disagree with the rule. They disagree with the targeting rule. They think that it puts an unfair reputation on them because, if a player hits somebody and the other player that was hit gets a concussion and is out, then the player that hit the other player is labeled as a dirty player, and they just get this bad reputation, and a lot of money comes out of their pocket. When you look deeper into it, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons why it could happen. It could happen because the quarterback throws a bad ball or the receiver runs a bad route. In most circumstances, it's not the player being a dirty player, it's him playing the game of football that they all love. They all know going into the sport that it was a very dangerous sport, and I take the player's side. I think that there's really no way, and research studies show that there's no way to really prevent concussion injuries, because even after the targeting rule, they are still the highest rated injury throughout seasons. And with that, knee injuries have now rose as well. So I think that there's really no way that you could do it without taking away the game of football, and therefore I think the targeting rule it's not a good thing, and it's not what the NFL or college football needs.
Thanks, Braxton. After doing the research from the medical standpoint, I also agree that the NCAA should get rid of the targeting rule because it was implemented to bring down the concussions and head injuries, and like Braxton said before, it's not. In fact, they've increased by almost 2%, and you see that in the 5-year research between 2009 and 2014. Also, with them trying to bring that down, they've allowed the leg injuries with the legs, knees, ankles, and foot injuries to increase by almost 12%. And those are actually more critical and more long-term, unlike a slight head injury can be. I mean, yes, head injuries can be very crucial. You can have a lot of effects with that. But with the leg injuries, that can keep a player from playing the game for the rest of his career. You know, it can bring arthritis and more pain. So with that being said, I do agree that their targeting rule should be gotten rid of altogether because they implemented a rule hoping that injuries would decrease, yet here it is over 10 years later and research being put in showing that it's not decreasing. In fact, it's increasing. Why would they keep a rule in that's causing more injuries to occur to their football players? If you're going to have a football player do rules that are affecting their injuries and making more injuries come out of it, why would you want them to continue following that same rule?
I basically agree with all of Samantha's points. Like my football coach said, the targeting rule has done little to change the amount of head injuries in a football game, and the rate of concussions in every game is still the same. So I think the rule either needs to be changed or taken out completely because it's shown to be ineffective in a football game.
We'd like to thank our stakeholders who provided us with valuable and accurate information due to personal experience. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners for keeping an open mind towards this subject and listening to what we had to say. Our group has come to the same opinion, but that certainly does not mean everyone will come to the same conclusion. Thank you again, and Cats by 90.
The music presented to you today was by yours truly, Wildcat Marching Band. Hope you all enjoyed.